I would like to address two people, or beings actually, that I met recently over the past few years, Satan and Lucifer. Um, Satan and Lucifer were part of a group. There were 1,738 of them total, and they're called Draco Reptilians. And there has been so much false information put out by Lucifer and Satan both. And it's funny. The funny thing is I never believed they exist because you know how religious people will say, "Oh, you didn't do your homework. The devil's going to come and get you and drag you off to hell, where you'll spend the rest of eternity burning in fire and brimstone, and all because you didn't do your homework, young man." My family never told me that, but this is an example. Um, I've done DNA readings. You know, I never believed in them, so you can imagine how shocked I was when they actually showed up in the house. Um, Satan and Lucifer were arrested in September of 2013. They were the last two of the 1,738 Dracos. There were Satan, Lucifer, Set, Il, Baphomet, Maldek, Marduk. There were a whole bunch of this guy named Ed who lived in the sun. He was a non-physical, also Draco Reptilian. And so I thought I would share. I've read Satan and Lucifer's DNA many times, and for some reason, the dark side always has 156 strands activated. We humans, for a long time, had two strands activated, which is called a state of limited consciousness. And our natural state is a little over 1,000,000 strands of DNA activated, and that's called a state of full consciousness, which we are all returning to very, very soon, actually probably within a year, because we're coming up to the big split for the new Earth. All the dark entities, people who have 50% or less sacred light, have to leave this planet, and God's created another planet for them to go to, because we're ascending up into the next higher dimension. But Satan was, like I said, a Draco Reptilian. He was born in a star system called Alpha Draconis. Lucifer was actually born in the same star belt, or same solar system, in a star system, the Draco constellation. I'm sorry, Draco constellation. And a lot of these horrible reptilians that we have here, like serial cannibal Elizabeth Windsor, that most people call Queen Elizabeth, was also born in Alpha Draconis. And there's a couple star systems out there. Of course, now they're all benevolent. You know, all the dark side has gone into the light in our solar system. I mean, I'm sorry, in our galaxy. And here on Earth are the only dark entities left, except for Bellatrix. And there might be some other places I'm not aware of yet. But Satan, you know, typical for the dark side here, 156 strands activated, 0% sacred light. And this is a magic number for many people, like mass murderer Barbara Bush at 156 and 0, who, you know, has murdered several. You know, they are running a child trafficking operation, and one of the most horrific things they did was when they murdered 500,000 children in the Middle East. And what really showed us is how they just sat around laughing about it, because that's so typical for the dark side. They love to murder humans. That's where they're running a child trafficking operations, because they have to do Luciferian human sacrifices. But Satan's DNA was 46.1 million years old, and he was 100% Alpha Draco Reptilian. And he also, after he lived in Alpha Draconis, then he went to Bellatrix. And Bellatrix is another star system that's not very far away from from us here on Earth, and it's part of the Orion belt, or part of the Orion constellation over there. There's Alnitak, Alnilam, Mintaka, Bellatrix. There's a bunch of star systems over there. Mintaka's amphibian community. Like, have you ever seen the Geico commercials? I've seen a lot of beings like that, look like that little dude, but they're about 6 feet tall, and the ones I know are yellow, and then they have lighter color, like a cream belly, and sometimes they have triangles, you know, on their side pointing into their belly. But Bellatrix is where these reptilians get the ability to shapeshift, and both Satan and Lucifer had that ability because they both lived in. And one time I had posted online that Satan was from Alpha Draconis and Bellatrix, and he came in, he was really upset. He goes, "I am not from Bellatrix." And of course they're gone now, they're arrested. 1,738 Dracos were arrested. 457 of them, Mother and Father God and I arrested. And to go on to Lucifer, and after Bellatrix, Satan moved to Earth. Lucifer was a little bit younger. His DNA was 46.025 million years old. And also, again, 100% Alpha Draconis Reptilian. And that whole story about how Lucifer sat next to God in heaven is just total crap. It's just all BS. When the dark side created Christianity in 300 AD, they wanted to have, well, the dark side wanted to have one world religion. And that's why they created the Vatican, which we know today as a child trafficking corporation that's raped and murdered probably hundreds of thousands of children in their history. I've never actually done. The current, they call him Pope Francis, but his real name is actually convicted child trafficker Jorge Bergoglio. And he was just here in America, and he raped 3 children and murdered 2. But the really good news is, while he was raping a 7-year-old boy named Juan Carlos, who was given to him by DARPA had provided, one night they had a party for the Vatican members, and they supplied 14 children for them so they could rape and murder them and drink their blood, which is what they do all the time. Jorge Bergoglio is also a serial cannibal, and he likes to drink the blood of infants and partially eat them. They like to select babies that have never been vaccinated or have any chemicals in their system. They're very picky about how they choose these children. But Lucifer got around much more, and he was from Alpha Draconis, and then he moved to Eta Draconis, off to Beta Draconis, and then to Gamma Draconis. And he also moved to Bellatrix because he wanted the shape-shifting abilities, because for some reason in Bellatrix, if you move there and you're a reptilian, they can grant you, like George Bush and Dick Cheney also had that ability, but I've been told recently that they lost it due to the vibrations. And also I was checking for clones today, because I didn't even really know that clones were real, and there's only 8 clones now on the planet. And Hillary Clinton doesn't have any clones, and the main ones are for Bush and Cheney. They always have to keep spares because the clones burn out really quickly. I think Cheney's on, let's see, I think I pull up Dick Cheney's DNA. Let's see, what number of clones does he have now? 8. He's on number 8. And where's Bush's at? Let me pull up George Bush's DNA, H.W. Bush's DNA. Thank you. He's had 12 clones. Wow, I didn't even know. He's been busy down there in Texas, raping and murdering children. Bush Sr. has raped and murdered over 500 children, well over 500 children, and he's the one who owns a child trafficking corporation called MyLab Child Trafficking Operations, which is owned and operated by DARPA and the CIA. After Bellatrix, Lucifer went on to Alnitak, Alnilam, and then he came to Earth. And they wanted, what they did was, the reason I was brought in, because Bush Sr. was the first person that raped me in the dark side, and he was desperately trying to get me to join the dark side because God's given me some wonderful gifts. Sylvia Brown calls me a gifted psychic because I can see people's DNA and read information out of it. So all I have to do is call for a person's DNA, and it appears right before me, and the DNA is on the left and the information is on the right, and then I just start reading. And the first thing that usually comes up is how many children that were raped and murdered by the person I'm reading, and which is the biggest thing that I use my psychic gifts for, is to seek justice for all these children who are being raped and murdered. But that whole story about Lucifer being a fallen angel, there's no such thing as a fallen angel, people. There has never, ever, ever in the history of this universe been an angel that's turned away from God. Now, if you go back into history, you'll say, oh, there were fallen angels that came from the sky and they came down and raped our women. No, they weren't angels. They were pretending to be angels so they could confuse people who wanted to connect to God. Nothing to do with angels, people. Angels don't have genitalia, and they do not mate. And but the good news is that Lucifer and Satan have been arrested, along with all the 1,738 Dracos. And Mother and Father God and I did 457 of them, and I have yet. There's 15 people on the planet, and I'm one of them. There's 14 others that we have been sending. There's one group of dark entities. They were non-physical beings. I call them Draco Reptilian spirits because they're not the same as they're not the same level as the Draco Reptilians, the Satan and Lucifer, Set, Il, Baphomet, and all the rest of them. And they were between 5 and 600 million people. I'm sorry, 5 and 600 million of these spirits. And my part of that was to send 17.5 million of them into the light. And it's really been busy. You know, I lived in New York and Miami for a number of years. And I thought, well, someday I know I'm going to go back to Indiana and live there, but I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. It's going to be so boring. You know, it has been nonstop in Indiana. I've just met so many people that I never expected to meet out here. Became friends with a lot of wonderful people, but it's never a dull moment. And then this morning I did a message from Eric Garner, who he's just like a big teddy bear. You know, I think everybody would just love to go run up and give him a big hug. But without even thinking, I mentioned who the one was ordered his murder, which was the chief of police for New York City Police Department. Well, it's been a real busy day. You can imagine who came a-calling right after I accused the chief of police of New York City for selecting Eric Garner to be murdered, and then he had his minion police officers do it, who were under heavy, heavy mind control. Most police officers have etheric chips in their head, and many of them also have what I call micronized robots, even sometimes over 2 million of them inside their bodies. So police officers can be easily controlled because they believe what they're told to believe, and they do what they're told to do, which is protect the men who rape and murder children. But please, people, Lucifer was not a fallen angel. He had nothing to do with the light. He's never been to heaven. Oh, one thing I pulled up in their DNA was how many each one of them murdered. Okay, Satan murdered 35,17,599 people in his history. Lucifer murdered 42,118,005 people in his 46 million year plus history. So, thank you and have a nice day.